Hey, Ben.
Going into the penultimate episode of Season 3 of Yellowjackets, Van's fate once again hung in the balance, like we have seen so many times before. Van had been kept under sedation in the hospital due to complications with her liver cancer, which caused her to cough up blood back in episode 7.
Oh my god!
That is not good.
Oh my god.
In A Normal Boring Life, Thais' personality split apart from her alter self, who locked her out of Van's hospital room, telling her that she wouldn't do what needed to be done in order to save Van. What happened in that room after other Ty locked herself out is still unknown, but episode 9 opens with Van having another dream of her younger self in the hospital room with her. Young Van has a very important question for her older counterpart. Do you remember the Goonies? It's one of the greatest quests of all time. Though adult Van had seen the movie about 100 times more than her younger self, she needed to be reminded that it is a classic hero's journey, which results in the discovery of buried treasure. X marks the spot. Young Van pulled out a vial labeled 2525, which she drew up into a syringe and injected the solution into Van's IV fluid bag, while telling her to listen to Thaisa, who has been trying to help her. She said the injection is a little something for the road, and when adult Van asked her where she was going, she heard her younger voice echoing in her head, to find the treasure. Van wakes up in the hospital room with Ty seated next to her. From Ty's emotional state, Van understands that the prognosis isn't good, and she and Ty agree they need to get out of there. Goonies never say die, so they get Misty and rent a car and head to Virginia to track down Shauna, who had ditched them at the hospital. But that figures. On their way, they find someone having an even worse day than Van on the side of the road. Misty recognizes Melissa outside of her broken down van, trying to push her dislocated shoulder back into socket. As far as any of the women were aware, Melissa had been dead for years. They had all gone to her funeral. Even without the hat, Misty's finely honed citizen detective skills gave her the ability to recognize a battered and bloody, supposedly dead former friend. Yellowjackets never say die. Melissa took off running in the other direction while Ty backed the car up to cut her off. Right next to Melissa's broken down van was a railroad sign.
X marks the spot.
Ty hopped out of the car and gave Mel the old Allie Stevens, taking her down at the knee. They piled Melissa into the car, and all four of them stared at each other in disbelief. Melissa said that Shauna had attacked her and forced her to eat her arm. This meant that only Melissa could have sent the tape, to which Ty asked, "What did you think Shauna was going to do?" They all know exactly how crazy Shauna is. They head to Melissa's house, where Shauna was trying to clean up the mess of their fight as quickly as she could.
Shut up, or you really will be dead.
Van, Melissa, Misty, and Ty return, where Shauna wants to finish what she started, but Misty still believes that Shauna was responsible for Lottie's death, and her being covered in blood in Melissa's kitchen isn't making her look any less guilty, nor the reminder of how familiar this all felt to the Addams situation. Misty refused to clean up any more of Shauna's messes, and she got the heck out of Dodge before the situation went any further. Thaisa tied Melissa's hands behind her back and sat her near the fireplace as the other women decided her fate. While they were focused on their conversation, Melissa pulled a chain in the fireplace which closed the chimney flue, slowly allowing smoke and carbon monoxide to fill the house. Van stepped out to the car to take a breather using her oxygen mask. Now, before we get too much further, it seems important to talk a little bit more about the hero's journey and how it has guided Van's story arc, particularly in the adult timeline. Van is someone who loves stories and storytelling, and her life is dedicated to classic movies and TV shows. The hero's journey is a common narrative archetype, sometimes called a monomyth, outlining the hero's transformation through a series of steps or stages. According to writer Joseph Campbell, a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. In his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Campbell describes 17 stages of the monomyth. These were divided into 3 sections: the descent, or separation, the initiation, and the return. This is similar to the 3 stages of the Eleusinian mysteries, which we have discussed many times for their connection to the Yellowjackets rituals and the pomegranate theory. The 3 stages of the mysteries are the descent, the search, and the ascent, very similar in their processes. Hollywood writer Christopher Vogler reinterpreted Campbell's monomyth structure for modern prose in his book The Writer's Journey, Mythic Structure for Writers. His interpretation reduced the hero's journey to 12 stages, which seemed to encompass Van's adult story arc throughout seasons 2 and 3. The elixir is the treasure in its various forms. An elixir is typically defined as a magical or medicinal potion or particular type of medicinal solution. And interestingly, younger Van drew from a vial labeled 2525, giving cause to her older counterpart to take up the call of adventure. 2525 is the flight number of their plane, and whatever was in the vial, it appeared as a black, cloudy solution in Van's IV bag, reminiscent of Lost. This brought to mind the scene back in season 1 with Van, Lottie, and Misty, where they placed the bear heart at the tree altar as an offering to the wilderness. Lottie said, "Let the darkness set us free." The 2525 medication also set Van free from her sedation, the ties binding her to the hospital, so there seems to be a connection there.
And let the darkness set us free.
Many fans are understandably upset about Van's fate, but from the perspective of the hero's journey narrative, it worked on many levels. Van was always fated to die, from the plane crash to being attacked by wolves, the cabin fire, the cave gases, and finally liver cancer. Van has a strong connection to fire, and interestingly, fire is symbolically connected to the liver because of Prometheus. Prometheus was one of the Greek titans who gifted mankind with fire, thus enraging Zeus, who punished him by chaining him to a mountain, where an eagle ripped out his liver each day. His liver regenerated each night, binding him to eternal punishment. So, Van's fate was always sealed by her connection to fire and her ability to evade death. Melissa is another character who is linked to resurrection, which we have discussed in another video. She faked her own death and lived another life as Kelly, where she married Hannah's daughter, Alex, but never told her the truth about what happened to her mother. Hannah's last name was Finch, and Melissa wore a goldfinch feather, which is a bird symbolically connected to Christ. When Hannah told Melissa about her daughter in the wilderness, Melissa's perspective changed on keeping her prisoner because she had a kid. She had a lot more sympathy for her because of her child. Ironically, Shawnee uses that to accuse Melissa of being a fool, that Hannah was lying to her about having a child. Melissa survived being shot by a crossbow arrow in her right shoulder, and Shauna also shot a gun at her, which thankfully only grazed her jean jacket. Back in the adult timeline, Shauna had pulled Melissa's left arm out of its socket and bit a chunk from her right arm. This girl can't catch a break. However, this all adds up to something much greater, which also fits with Van's ultimate fate and the hero's journey, so let's find out how the story ends. Melissa had closed the chimney flue, which filled her house with toxic fumes, causing Ty and Shauna to pass out. Melissa tried to crawl on her belly to escape while she was still conscious. Her hands were still tied behind her back. Van came back into the house, wondering what had happened. Melissa told her what she had done, and Van opened the vent. She rushed to drag Ty's unconscious body outside, placing her oxygen mask over her face. Ty was having a vision, much like Van had experienced during her trip into the cave, and she encountered her other self in the cave she was trapped in. There was another phone there where other Ty could hear Van's voice and what was happening in the real world. Real Ty and her alter self began fighting before Van woke her up, and Ty said that it was really her. Van did something she hadn't done yet and told Ty she loved her and gave her a kiss and returned into the house to drag Shauna out. God only knows what sort of messed up gas vision she was having that time around. Van then went back for Melissa, but she was faced with a choice. Adventure called, and all signs were pointing to the final quest. Van picked up a knife and stood over her limbless conquest. She cut Melissa's hands free. Van must choose if she would make a sacrifice to appease the wilderness or if she would succumb to her fate. The darkness or the light. But Van has never been that person. She's a good person, and Melissa reminded her of that. She offered herself to be Van's sacrifice if that's what the wilderness desired, but Van could not bring herself to go through with it. She dropped her hand and the knife, coming face to face with Melissa, but Melissa was not the same as Van. She could choose the darkness, as we've seen before. She grabbed the knife and thrust it through her abdomen, right into the liver.
But I do. Isn't this what it wants?
This does leave many questions, the biggest being, did Van conquer her destiny? Her younger self tells her that she saved her true love, but could things have been different if she would have killed Melissa? Did Melissa gain the favor of the wilderness by taking Van's life, or did she have her own specific purpose in mind? We've talked about Melissa's connection to the Melissae, the bee priestesses who serve the goddess Demeter in Greek mythology. They play a part in the Eleusinian mysteries as well, and in another video, I correctly predicted that Melissa and Shauna would have a relationship with each other, so check that out. It's linked in the description. Melissa also appears to be connected to dragon and serpent symbolism, as we saw when she had her hands bound behind her back. She filled her lair with toxic fumes to disable predators, which is imagery often used in dragon folklore. She was limbless, reduced to a crawling worm, which is also what she called her daughter, as she and Alex were packing apples for their lunch. Apples are associated with the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, and of course that is connected to the serpent and to Satan, or to Lilith. Melissa also had a large tree on her kitchen wall, and Shauna dreamt of apples in her grocery store dream right before breaking into Melissa's house. Dual realities are a concept that Yellowjackets has been exploring throughout season 3, and Melissa also plays into that idea. She's created a double life for herself as Kelly, and her wife knows nothing about her past life or experiences in the wilderness. Just as Melissa was connected to the Melissae, Kelly seems to be connected to Melusine, who is a water spirit from European folklore, typically depicted as a mermaid or two-tailed serpent from the waist down. She's most well known as the two-tailed mermaid who appears on the Starbucks logo, but she's also known as the progenitor of many great ruling European dynasties, including the House of Anjou and the House of Plantagenet and the Limburg-Luxembourg line. The tale of Melusine at its core is about marrying someone you don't truly know. Melusine is cursed as a monster in human skin who keeps that secret from her husband, just as her mother kept the same secret from Melusine's father. Once her husband learns the truth of her identity and her two tails, it leads to the downfall of their beloved marriage.
My life is normal. It's boring.
Melissa and the other Yellowjackets are also monsters in human skin. They view themselves as corrupted from their experiences in the wilderness, which is a nod to Paradise Lost, one of Shauna's favorites. Melissa lies to her wife about her true identity, and she just wanted a normal, boring life if she were able to get out of the wilderness. But once she has that simple life she desired, much like the other Yellowjackets, she finds a way to burn it all down while pretending that's not precisely what's happening. Melissa didn't have to send the tape to Shauna. That was quite foolish, and she should have expected a reaction. She claims she was trying to put the past behind her, but she's married to Hannah's daughter, so she found a way to live in the past while pretending she was someone else entirely. Dragons are a symbol of wisdom, hidden knowledge, regeneration, primal and elemental energy, and their association to the feminine connects them in particular to water. This is very interesting when it comes to Van and Melissa because Van has such strong fire symbolism associated with her. It was fitting for Van's heroic journey to conclude with being killed by a dragon, of all things. And I would not be surprised if we see Melissa have a connection to water, so keep an eye out for that. I know this video went super deep on the symbolism, but you can see the overarching themes here which are guiding the broad strokes of the story. Again, I know many people are very upset about Van's death and Melissa taking front and center out of the blue. The writers were able to work out the details for Van's death in a poetic manner, which complemented her love for storytelling and adventure, so I'm satisfied with how it all played out, though I would have loved to see more from Lauren Ambrose. I think Van's death will have a greater purpose and become a catalyst for Taissa to overcome her own struggles with the two sides of her personality, because I feel like it's far from over when it comes to other Ty. She's not giving up that easily. We have to wonder if Van's fate was the ultimate goal of other Ty, who is connected to the man with no eyes, who is a symbol of death. Looking back at Van's dream and the 25-25 drug, what did that lead to? Her death, and another soul for the man with no eyes to claim. So we have to wonder if it was truly Melissa who took Van's life, or if it was another one of Ty's inadvertent actions which led to the somewhat untimely death of her true love. But those are just my thoughts, so let me know yours in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Check out the Monday Morning Murder Podcast each Monday, covering the newest episodes of Yellowjackets and much more. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
What's the point of doing this? Stop!